again, and welcome back to my channel. If you're a regular viewer or subscriber to the channel, you may have noticed I've been away for a little while producing making content for the channel. It's not that I've actually stopped or I've been away. I've actually been working on one specific project, which is a modular concept of design and building. And to be honest, I've been working at it for the last couple of months, so it's taken me quite a long time. And today's video is the first of that concept of producing a modular design. Now clearly I'm not the first person in the world, the first maker in the world to come up with a modular design, but I'd just like to explain my ideas behind it, and it's twofold really why I've decided to do this. Firstly, a design like this can be assembled and disassembled for someone like myself who's a renter, and I've been long-term renter at this house. But that's not to say we may get the dreaded phone call from the landlord saying, sorry Leo, I'm selling the house and we've got to move on. So if you're building something as something that's obviously going to be a substantial weight or size, then and you want to keep it, because the thing I've done today is built to last, then you'd like to be able to disassemble that and take that away with you. And the second and slightly more important reason why I've gone down this modular idea is large builds for me, particularly kind of mentally as well as my physical limitations, are quite a difficult thing. You might just see this as sort of four sides, a top and a bottom, and just think, well, not that hard. But if you've watched my projects, you've watched my videos, you'll know that my projects take me a long time to create. And psychologically, on a bigger build, that can be quite a stumbling block. So what I've done with this modular design is broke down the overall design into mini projects, if that makes sense. So building the base is a project in itself, building the lid is a project, building the two sides was a project in itself. So it kind of gave me little mini goals and mini achievements to instead of looking at one big project and going, I can't do that, it's too big, it'll take me too long. So it's really been good for me in kind of like my mental side of things, in having small achievements and small goals to achieve, but also it gives me an overall finished project that I have to say I'm really happy with. A couple of things, if you stick with me till the end, that I could get some advice, maybe need your help on, but I really do hope you enjoy this build. There's a few new toys or newish toys that creep up in it. My Ferrex, I love my Aldi tools. My Ferrex brad nail gun got a lot of use in this one, and also a recent acquisition, WorkZone cordless hand planer, which I will be looking at doing a video on this in the near future. And also, if you follow the channel, this will be the first time you see this live and in action, unleashed with the one-handed woodworker. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. As I say, stick with me to the end, or skip through to the end if you can't be bothered, because I do have a few questions or a little bit of advice that I really would appreciate with. Take care, and I'll see you at the end.
Part of the appeal of doing a modular construction, particularly on something that's box shaped like a cold storage box, is the idea of using 8x4 boards that are square. Basically makes it so much easier in terms of your measuring up, and in this case I'm using 12mm OSB boards. Now if you have your cut list early, you can actually, my local timber merchants do the cuts for you, but I didn't, apart from the fact that I knew I wanted it to be 4 foot wide and 2 foot deep. So the idea was to take the OSB board, which will be the inner lining and also part of the structural integrity, and to attach treated 2x2 timbers to each section. So in this section here, which I'm doing, which is the base for the whole box, I've got the board that was cut from the timber yard, which is 4 foot by 2 foot, sorry, and I'm attaching, measuring up and attaching the 2x2s to it. Now what I needed to do obviously was take the two lengths and then measure up the width but minus the two lengths of treated 2x2, which I could then cut to provide the actual box shape. I'm also using the slide table feature on the Evolution table saw, which I'm really impressed with this saw. The more I use it, which is basically in every project now, the more I'm impressed with it, particularly using the mitre gauge and the sliding table feature, which is excellent. First thing I was going to do is, that I'm doing in this part, is gluing down the sections of 2x2 on the perimeter. Now, I was using either, in this project, either Titebond 2 or Titebond 3, whatever I had available, because Titebond 2 is water resistant, Titebond 3 is waterproof, and obviously this is going to live outside. It's not going to be completely the bonding element, as I'm also, once this was the day after, once it had, the glue had dried, and then attaching it with flipping it over and using fixings. Firstly, just apply, pre-drilling some holes, and then with the FedEx impact driver, which I've done a review on previously. It's a great piece of kit, this, and just sealing them together with some fixings. This being the base, I decided to add an extra piece of 2x2 into the middle section. It's structurally it was sound anyway, but it was just to give it that extra support if I do decide to put, you know, several large bags of coal into this into my storage box, just to give it that little bit of extra support on the base. This stage, my stupidity nearly got the better of me. I was cutting down the larger boards. I thought the straightforward solution would be to use my track saw, and I measured it up and sliding along here, and then realised probably about 2/3 of the way the OSB would split in half as I'm cutting it along. So thankfully I had a bit of a better solution, which was to use an old pallet board and to use my track saw lower down, so when I actually cut it and I got to the final bit, it cut fine and there's no split. Also, cutting it down this way allowed me to use the extension arms on the Evolution table saw to cut down some of the larger pieces of board. Now, one thing I do need to remember in future is the dust extraction hose isn't long enough when you're cutting longer boards, so you need to it's alright when I'm outside cutting it like this, but you need to sort of take that away and then you can cut it right through. It's pretty straightforward. Same thing for when I'm doing the side panels, is I've got to measure the width and then take that off against it. I'm actually just showing off here that I've actually taught myself how to do capital letters and numbers writing now with my left hand, because I was getting fed up not being able to write. Same process for the glue up here. If you see the little piece of offcut which has got the X on it, I was using some 2x2, treated 2x2 I already had, and against some new bought stuff from the timber yard, and there was a slight discrepancy, there was a slight difference in the actual height on some sides, so I was using it to check, and if you look here on one of the ones that I glued down, it was ever so slightly raised. So I took my new, well, relatively new, I've had it a little while now, my Work Zone cordless planer, just to take that little bit of an edge off. It was only maybe a mil difference, but just want to make things just nice and squared up, because when it comes to the assembly later on, it's so much easier. Okay, and now we're on to the domino. Now, in this project, I'm not using dominoes for assembly purposes. I'm actually using them to line up the joints, so when I assemble it later on with all the panels, I can use the domino. I was using the external dominoes, which are made from a slightly different wood to the normal ones, and also I'm using all the gadgets that came with it, just to make sure it's easier for me to align it up in the horizontal position, and safer as well when I'm cutting the dominoes in. That I've got the actual sections on the side, and I think it was the Q set that I got that was it, yeah, his name, the Domino DF500 Q set, and it just allowed me to safely use it when I'm putting the dominoes down. Now here's just a little example of, with the dominoes in place, how I can secure them in place and it can hold itself there independently while I'm just aligning it up. Like normally you guys would do this with one arm whilst aligning it with the other. Unfortunately I don't really have that luxury at the moment, so the next stage would be to make the front and back panel, and I was just double checking on the size, having got the two side panels in place, and again showing off with my left hand, writing down the actual length and the height of what needs to be cut. And then back to the Evolution, back to me, it's the Evolution Rage 5S table saw, using it against the fence this time, and then I had a panel roughly cut to size and I was just trimming it down to size to make the right size for the front panel and for the back panel as well. Now here you can see I'm actually just doing a little dry fit here and just clamping it up. I wasn't actually happy with the second set of dominoes that I'd cut from the edge, so what I'm actually doing is marking in 10 inches from either side, because I know the screws that fixed the OSB in place, they were at 6-inch intervals, so I'm marking a new slot there, and we'll do the same on the other side to slot it in place, and just putting the dominoes in there just to do a dry fit and a double check. And that seems to be okay. The next stage was to create a section between the front and back panels and the side panels, between there and the actual lid, which would join the four sections together. And I'm just marking out the width of the 2x2 onto those, and then also bringing the blade down on the table saw to halfway down, which I'm going to cut some trench cuts, and I'm going to join the four sections together using lap joints. I tidied the cuts up with my rather pathetically blunt chisel, but it done the job in this instance. And then the next stage after that was to take a little dab of glue on each section and to join them together with some fixings and clamp it up overnight. Okay, if you watched me shaker style doors two-part video, you'd have seen me use this little MDF jig I created. It's just basically it's for hinges really, and in that section I've just made up, I'm going to use my router just to create a little inlay or a little recess in which the hinges will sit flush instead of protruding from the actual from the section that will attach to the lid and also attach to the body of the box. Right, this is where catastrophe number one came into play on the build. I found this kind of, I'm presuming some form of roofing felt in the back of the garage when we moved in. So it's been there for approximately, well, it's been there for at least 5 years, more than likely around and about 10. But so I unravelled it, got a load of glue out, and then fixed it down onto the lid. as you can see, and weighted it down and let the glue go off overnight. And then I took some fixings with some washers just to try and attach it to the side, and then I was just going to cut off some of the excess. This is simply not working. Alright, it's a complete... no, it's going to have to come off. Made this decision blimmin' ages ago. Oh well. Live and learn. Live and learn. Right. So to pop these in. But it was a complete unmitigated disaster. There was no flex at all in it. Whenever I tried to bend it over to the sides of it, it just ripped or torn, or it was absolutely rubbish. So there was only one thing to do with it. We're moving on to the cladding now, and I was just for this project just using featherboards because well, basically they're cheap, and I wasn't sure, you know, how the project was going to progress, so I wanted to use something cheap to start off with, and then if I go on to any future projects using the same construction methods, I might look at something a little bit more fancy or a little bit more long term in terms of the cladding. So I was just cutting it to the in this case the side pieces, and just lining up, and I was using my Ferrex brad nail gun. Now this isn't to actually fix them in place properly, it's just to get them lined up. So if you see me using my square there, just to get them in the right place and just to fix them there so they don't move, so I can get the next one in place. And then the idea then was I'll go along with my drill driver to pre-drill some holes, and then use my impact driver to apply some fixings to make sure that they're not going anywhere. A bit of a random one here, but most of my featherboards were pretty much soaked. So I tried to separate them up as best I can on my stands, and I got the external fire going just to try and dry them out. And believe it or not, I actually did quite a good job. I didn't completely get rid of the moisture, but it was just enough for me to get these attached. One thing I did realise when I'd put the featherboards on was I hadn't accounted for the size of the base, and so the OSB and the 2x2, so I had to take up the bottom piece of it and then attach an additional featherboard, to which I'd done a dry check just to make sure it fitted okay, and to make sure I didn't make that mistake on the other three panels. So I've just done a quick check, and touch wood, pardon the pun, it all seemed to be okay. And then the next stage was just to do the same for the front and back panels. The only difference with this one being that the actual featherboards need to be slightly extended on either side to account for the size of the side panels and to cover them up. Right, after my complete and utter disaster, which was the fragile felt that I found in the back of the garage, or fragile in England's batting order at the moment, I went to the old timber merchants and I got a rather large piece of this damp damp-proof membrane, which I think is going to work fine. So this is going to seal the top of the cold storage box, and I can actually put a layer underneath it to protect the wood underneath. I'm going to cut a piece out, put it on, and I'm going to use my relatively new FedEx brad nail gun, which came with the world's most unnecessarily big staples, so hopefully that won't go through. I'm going to try that and see how it goes, and hopefully better than my last attempt to clad the top of it. Fingers crossed. By the way, if you think this is bad, yeah, you should have seen the state of my Christmas wrapping. Whenever we get round to assembly time, and I had to do it in the actual location I wanted it to be due to the sheer weight of the thing. Each panel is actually quite heavy. I put some of that damp-proof lining that I bought for the lid just down on the base, just to give it a little bit of extra protection to the treated wood that was on the floor, and it actually worked out pretty well. The dominoes and stuff were fantastic to be able to slide them in, because it meant that I knew they were square, I knew that they were in place, and I knew that they would pretty much stand alone whilst I could fit the other panels in place. So it was a pretty good idea on that respect, and it's something I'd definitely do again for any future modular build. It was a last minute idea to get the ratchet clamp out, and then to secure all the 4 panels in place, and to get them square, which I eventually managed to get round to doing somehow. There we go. Which then meant I could bring the top section into place and to apprise some pre-drilled holes again, and then some fixings just to get all the 4 panels locked together. Final task was to get the lid on. A little bit of a difficult challenge, this one, on your own, in a one-armed fashion, but my idea was if I could just get them more or less in place and get one fixing in on one side, which I managed to do just about. I then went across to the other side and got all the fixings in on that one, and then went back to the other one, which, believe it or not, actually went okay.
Okay, if you've stuck with me till now, well, I hope you enjoyed that build project. I never mentioned at the start that the idea of the cold storage box is the small, the test run, if you like, for some other things that I want to do. The next stage for me is to build a bike shed using a similar modular concept. In fact, a very similar design, just slightly altered. And if you can do a modular concept for a coal store, and you can upgrade it to a bike shed, can you do it to a garden room? And that's the question I'm going to be asking myself when the weather gets a little bit better. Is I have in my head an idea of using 8x4s to build a modular system for a garden room that could be assembled and, if necessary, disassembled and moved, or disassembled and sold. So that's the kind of running order in my head, slightly upscaling things as we go along. A couple of things about this project, things that obviously that need to be completed and things what I do differently. Obviously it needs to be treated. The weather's not been kind to me. You see me trying to dry out the featherboards which arrived from the timber yard, absolutely soaked through, and it did dry them out enough to put them on, but I want it to be completely dry before I give it a coat of the just garden fence stuff. So that needs to be done. The lid is a short-term solution. It will work, yeah, I'm pretty confident about that. Long-term, no. It needs to be something a little bit more substantial, and if you have any ideas, sort of a cost-effective way, really. I spoke to the guys at the timber yard and he talked about this kind of almost like a silicone stuff that you can paint on, he said, which is absolutely fantastic, but he said it was about 100 quid a tub. So I was like, no, you're alright, mate. But it's something that like maybe a rubber seal or something that you can be easily be attached. I can't nail things in. That's an issue for me. I can use my brad nailer obviously, and I can screw things in, but me using a hammer is not good for my safety and everybody else's health, really. So so if you've got any ideas for that, fantastic. Also, the idea was when I lowered them in and positioned them onto the base, I was going to turn it over and secure it from the underside, but the sheer weight of the thing, it's really, really heavy. The front panel and the back panel, I was just about kind of managing really to lift in. What I would have done differently, and if I do take the same idea to the bike shed, is I will assemble the structure, then add the cladding, because the cladding adds a lot of weight to it. So I would definitely put the frame in with the OSB and the 2x2 or the 3x2 if I'm going to do it for the bike shed, not sure yet. And then I would clad it after the frame has gone together. So yeah, there's quite a few lessons I've learned there. If there's anything you've picked up that you think, yeah, maybe would I consider doing it this way, or have you thought of this, then please leave a comment in the comments section and let me know what you think. I'm always good to respond to me to the comments that go in, and I really do appreciate the feedback. I'm an enthusiastic novice in this game, so I don't pretend to know everything, because I don't. I'm learning as I go along. I get great feedback from you guys, and if you can keep that coming, I'd really appreciate it. So I do hope you like this idea. The modular build is definitely moving on. I do like it, and also we've got a couple of other little videos to come up. I'm going to look at one or two. I can't really call it a full review, but I'm not going to call it initial thoughts, because these tools I've had for a little while, so it's kind of like a kind of midway sort of thoughts and what I think about them. So stuff to come up. Hope you enjoyed this one. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.